Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to be talking about a combined JD MBA program, whether or not it's something that's worth it and something that you should actually consider for your career. So for those of you who don't know, the JD and the MBA are a combined law degree with an MBA as well. And so typically in the United States, a law degree is going to be a 3-year program and an MBA, or most MBAs, are probably going to be a 2-year program as well. So if you're to do them individually, it's probably going to be a 5-year investment both in tuition and in time. And so doing the combined program will allow you to kind of save that year and perhaps do it in 4 years. Again, this will differ depending on the school and the program that you're looking at, but in a lot of cases, it's a combined 4-year program. Now, one of the things that you have to consider when you're looking at a program like this, particularly because the JD and the MBA are probably the most common combined degrees within a business school, and so you'll see a lot of business schools offer combined degrees with other subject areas as well. But the JD and MBA do have a lot of crossover, particularly if you're going into a field of law that does require a business background, or if you're going into a particular field within business that would benefit from having a legal background. For example, some areas of mergers and acquisitions and consulting and investment banking might actually benefit from having some legal expertise as well, but we'll go into that a little bit more as well. So one of the things to actually consider is when you're actually starting this program and how you're going to utilize the value that you get out of this program and whether or not it's actually going to be something that makes sense for you in your particular circumstance. So what I mean by that is this. If you're coming right out of your bachelor's degree, let's say you're 22 years old as an example, you go through the program, you're 26 when you graduate. At that point, you're going to career services and you're kind of looking at what opportunities are going to be available to you. And you're likely going to be looking at career services in both the business school and the law school. Now, on the business school front, you might find that you're at a little bit of a disadvantage because of the fact that a lot of the peers in your particular graduating class might already have a few years of work experience. And so you're competing with them for a lot of offers where they might have already had some internships, but have also even worked there on a full-time basis before their MBA degree. And so you might find that in terms of what opportunities are available to you, there might not be as many as maybe some of your counterparts, or if there are opportunities available to you, you might be starting at a little bit of a lower starting point in terms of salary based off of your specific experience. Given that the MBA program typically takes people with experience, there are positions that open up at the managerial level as well, which kind of assume some people management skills in the past as well. And so that might be a little bit harder for you to kind of convey your abilities in those particular interviews, given the fact that you would essentially just be coming out of your university studies then. So a lot of people could also look at the law school career services as well. And at this stage, you're still going through the same processes that the other law students would go through as well. And so you're maybe doing an articling position, you're doing a few internships, you're trying to pass the bar exam, and then after a few years, you might be able to secure a full-time position at a law firm. Now, the real value in that particular instance might come years after somebody graduates, because once they're actually in their full-time position or even trying to find a full-time position, they might have opportunities to work on some bigger cases or cases that require specific business backgrounds, or maybe if they're going into transaction law, you're able to work on some bigger transactions depending on the specific school that you're coming from, the specific program you're coming from. The opportunities are really going to vary, particularly within law. So that's something that's also worth looking into as well. But at this stage too, a lot of people wonder whether or not for the first few years having that MBA background is even really going to benefit the candidate as much as you would think that it would, given the fact that they're still going through the same processes that the other JD graduates are going through as well, just to actually get past the bar examination. And so that's something that's worth considering on an individual level, and whether or not maybe the MBA is something that you're going to really need depending on the specific type of law, or if it's something that is worth foregoing. The other side of this are people who already have a few years of work experience. And so perhaps you're going into your MBA program at 26 years old and you're graduating when you're 30. Maybe you even have a family at this stage. And so your financial situation might be a little bit different. And so you're looking to get different things out of this program as somebody who might be a little bit younger. Now, at this stage, when you graduate at 30, again, you're going to your career services at the law school, career services at the business school, and you're evaluating your options. Now, given the fact that you have some work experience, you might might actually have some MBA offers that are open up to you, and perhaps they might be similar to some of your counterparts, or maybe a little bit more specialized given your legal background as well. And what I think a lot of people find is that going through the traditional law school route will still mean that you're going to have to article after you're graduating or doing some internships while you pass the bar exam. So for the first few years after this, you're probably not going to be at the salary level that you would have hoped for coming out of this particular program. And if you're a little bit later in your career, you've got a family, your expenses are a little bit more, it might be a little bit more enticing for people to go down the business school career services route because of the fact the offers would be made right then and there, meaning that they don't actually have to go through an articling process to get some of the offers, whether they go into like a marketing role or an operations type of role, or something that doesn't actually really require a legal background, but is something that they actually qualify for based off of their previous background and based off of their business school curriculum. So it really is a balancing act, and it's whether or not somebody is actually willing to go through the extra years to actually be an attorney and to use a lot of the skills that they're able to, to develop within that period of time to further their career beyond that point. So depending on your specific circumstances and what you specifically want out of the education you're going to get, that's really going to change from person to person. In fact, a lot of people might go through the program and realize that, you know what, I thought I wanted to be an attorney. I thought I wanted to be a corporate attorney. I have a background in accounting or business or finance, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to combine that with a legal education to go into something more specialized. But I realized that maybe that's not something that they want anymore, and so they kind of resort back to the business school for career services, or maybe they really decide that they really want to go into law and they actually gravitate towards the career services at the law school and kind of pursue that route as well. But again, it is something that's going to differ depending on the school that you go to, the program that you go to as well, because the opportunities within law do vary quite dramatically, going to big law versus going into kind of a smaller family office. So these are all things to consider. Now, one of the other things to consider, probably the biggest thing with a combined program like this, is really the tuition that's tied to it. Not only are you going to be spending an extra few years in school to complete the program, whether it's a 3-year combined program or a 4-year combined program, again, it's really going to differ depending on what country, what school you're actually pursuing this at. But the actual tuition itself is probably going to be a major barrier to some people, and also just being out of the workforce for that period of time as well, particularly if you do have a few years of experience, because there are some schools that will prefer that students do have a few years of experience, which actually does make sense. Like if you're in MBA classes where all of your counterparts already have some work experience under their belt, like it would make sense because a lot of business schools, not only what you can get out of the curriculum, but it's what you can actually bring to the classroom as well, and what your peers can get out of you being there as well, right? And so it is important to have that context. Again, that's really going to differ depending on a particular school and program. So that's worth something that's worth looking into. But just being out of the workforce for that period of time while you're racking up that much debt for a particular program that's going to have a combined degree where you don't necessarily know whether you're going to utilize the other, or if there's a lot of crossover in the specific area of law that you want to work in, or the specific area of business that you want to work in, that it would actually require you to have the combined degree. It really is something to be considered on a case by case basis as well. The other thing to really consider about this particular degree as well is really the fact that a lot of your opportunities and your options coming out of the degree, like I mentioned earlier, is really going to depend on the pedigree of the school. Law school, same as business school, but even more so in some cases, really does emphasize the curriculum that you studied while you're at school, but also kind of where you went to school as well. Of course, you have the T14 in law school. So if you're looking at big law programs, you're going to want to look at the reputation of the school that you're coming from. That's going to be the case for business school as well. You do find that business school, because of the fact that you do have some professional background, work experience as well, you might have some opportunities to be a little bit more forgiving in that sense if you don't come from, Harvard Business School as an example, there might be some opportunities for you to still get into industries that are typically a little bit more lucrative. However, for law schools, in order for you to get some of the big law internships and to get into big law practices, a lot of the cases where you came to school, how you performed in those particular programs is going to be that much more important as well, particularly because from their perspective, when they're getting a bunch of applications and all of these students are fresh out of their university, they don't have a whole lot of other things to look at or to evaluate candidates by outside of where they went to school and how they performed. If there were other elements to the application as well, like perhaps where they worked previously and how that applies to the specific role, then perhaps there's a little bit more leeway there. But for law schools, because there is that lack of work experience, it's going to make it that much more important for you to go to the law school that you can get into and do as best as you can in that particular program. So I hope I've given you an overview of the combined JD MBA program. If it's something that you've ever pursued or have thought about pursuing, I'd love to hear in the comments in section below. So feel free to leave your comments, questions, and concerns. I'd love some suggestions for future segments as well. So feel free to leave those there as well. If you really enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.